even though I'm a councilor, even though I'm an elected official, I'm a politician, it's like a title that I loathe to some degree because it associates me with an institution that's this conformist institution that functions a certain way based on these old rules that were established long before I was born, and that have slowly changed over the years because people want to keep things the same, you know, and it's easier to control things when you retain the majority of the control. But politics is supposed to be about the people, the power of the people, and the elected officials are supposed to represent them. So I've found that I can upset politics, and I can upset that natural evolution that is being controlled by being involved, and I can upset it, and I can come in, and who better than the former graffiti writer, to come in and be like, yeah, well, no, this is, so you're telling me this is the way it's done, but you're not telling me why we have to do it this way. And when I say, why can't we do it this way? You're saying, well, this is the way it's always been done, or this is the way it's done. It's like, no, you have to explain to me why we can't think outside the box. We have to go back and look at our criteria and how we work with and how we help people rather than just repeat the same process. And I criticized, when I was in the opposition in the last mandate, I criticized the administration at the time and the mayor at the time a lot about their activities and their approach to the 375th anniversary of Montreal, where you're bringing in people from Europe, you're bringing in all these companies, you're spending millions of dollars on all these people to do these puppet shows in downtown Montreal and to do this and to do that. And I'm like, well, what about local artists? What about the people here who pay taxes, who are the ones who their taxes provide us with the money to do this? Why am I bringing somebody in from France on somebody from Montreal's tax dollar who I should be promoting? So I struggle with that. I struggle with that balance of bringing in international people. And some people argue, well, bringing in international people gets us international exposure. But I argue that doesn't. What I say, then that's a contract for somebody. They come in, they get paid, they go back. So I don't think that they necessarily go back promoting us. I don't see people in France necessarily coming out of their way to invite our artists out there. So I don't see that exchange happening necessarily. It's one of those things that, I see it in the street art community where I see a lot of people from Montreal who like to they go down to Art Basel, or they go down to these things, and they like to, mingle with everyone there and all the US artists and the international artists. And, they'll come here and they'll bring international artists here, and they'll pay to bring these international artists here. But how are you exporting artists? And again, it's not even necessarily the organization from here or the organizations from here that I expect to export. It's when you're out there and you're making these contacts, you need to be I want to see something physical. Like, I want to see something happen where those people are now inviting people out there too. So it's happening. I can't say it's not happening totally, but again, then it falls within a very specific group of individuals. It becomes its own kind of gentrified, pretentious circle or engagements with people or whatever it is. But you have to be willing to sacrifice that in order to perpetuate change and to keep it going, because nothing. It's kind of like, I've always used graffiti and street art. I could say the same thing for it's like a zoo. There's nothing beautiful about seeing a wild animal in a cage that was brought here outside of its natural environment and placed into a cage for me to have access to easily for $15 and go be in awe of this lion or this tiger or this bear or whatever it is. If I truly want to be in awe, and if I truly care, I'll find a way one day to travel to another country where there's a natural environment, whether it's the savannah or whatever, or I'll go somewhere. You can go do a peacekeeping mission, or you can go help build a school somewhere and live in another country for a few months and still have access and be exposed to all these things and cost you nothing. So it's like for me, it's how individuals decide, whether it's promoters, whether it's people who are artists or creators or whatever, or people who do cultural change. It's up to us to choose whether we want to be the owner of the zoo Or do we want to be the conservationist who protects the park and the wild animals? And I prefer to look at my approach to what is art or creativeness as more as a conservationalist. Like I'd rather work in conservation and look at saying, here's a natural environment. It exists. There's pros and cons about its existence in these environments or these worlds, but it can exist, and it has existed, and people do very well. There's artists who make exceptional amounts of money and livings, never having exhibited in a museum or a gallery their whole lives, and eventually, because of how much money they make and how much demand there is for their work, museums and galleries then want them, so they come and get them, and then they try to get them to do something there, because the galleries can't get those markets into their museums or their galleries, and their funding and their funders and their boards are getting older and dying, and the philanthropists that are funding and the people who are donating artwork and the families who are donating stuff to museums are disappearing. Their children have no interest in those cultures because they weren't brought up on the same thing, so they're interested in different things, but the museums and the galleries don't necessarily leave space for them to come in and bring their influence to the table, so they die out. So they just end up dying and being forgotten, like you said before, and just being pushed aside and forgotten by history. So, and new things get created, and then those institutions get mad because people are pushing against these institutional rules, but it's like, but you should have changed. You had an opportunity to evolve and change, or to expand, or to make yourself more open-minded at a time where you chose not to because it was easier just to repeat the same things, or you convinced yourself that this is how you had to do it because somebody before you said this is how it's done. And that's my problem with art history in school. That's my problem with education, is being told that this is how it is.